To be equally interesting as the morning one. We have some very interesting speakers here. We have Barry Tilton, who is going to be the next speaker. Lunch. And he is Senior Technical Advisor for Digital Integration at AIAA. His talk is going to be on can US public policy address the challenges of the digital, which is a very interesting thing. We'll talk about policy regulations, blah blah blah, but really make an impact, what do you need more than that for things to happen on the ground. We look forward to this talk. So where is the senior technical? Okay, let me introduce Barry. He has a very distinguished career. He is the Senior Technical Advisor for Digital Integration at He has over 39 years experience as an electrical engineer in the aerospace field and he both has PE and verified project management professional. He is a 20-year veteran of the US Air Force, where he had over 1,000 flight hours as a test director and worked as chief engineer, chief scientist, and program director for the US Defense and State Departments, as well as several international efforts with countries with high confidence. Barry earned his BSEE from USC and his MSEE from Northrop. He is a senior member of IEEE, Eta Kappa Nu, and AIAA, a life member of the USGIF, and a fellow of the American Geographical Society. He is the immediate past director of the IEEE Region 2. His current work includes expanding the applications of advanced technologies to the space and land. So, the floor is yours.
I don't go out of the channel.
Thank you.
When that's tired of just hearing all that. You have the fortunate thing of having me after lunch as opposed to keeping me from lunch. So I plan on being short. I can be a little longer, but I'm not going to. The issue of policy in the current administrative environment is more challenging than it would have been. In IEEE USA, we work to establish appropriate policy goals and objectives to advocate for technology wherewithal inside of Congress and the administration and such. And our staff has done a serious job typically of trying to stay apolitical in doing so. So you're working with the technology sake, and for the purpose of the members and the purpose of advocating for the population that supports the tech base. But right now, it's a little more complicated because regardless of what outside of political aisle you're on, everything has become a political issue. Everyone has taken sides on pretty much everything, which makes it more of a challenge. But in general, the issue I'm actually here for right now is less controversial in that way, because it's generally recognized that as long as there is a large digital divide, a large space between those who are digital haves, who are TikToking, sorry to say, or using their devices for some other intelligent purpose, or trying to get educated or whatever, and those who don't have access to devices, becomes sort of like a literacy question was a couple centuries ago. Without the access to these things, you're not part of the conversation, you're not part of the political room. So there, your voice can't be heard because you don't really know what's going on. Irrespective again of what your political voice is, that's a concern. So can that be solved by policy? That's the thing that I think you're supposed to do. That's okay, forget that, we already covered that. This is a map from the United States Census that sort of describes the problem in detail. If you look, there's states in this country that are very dark. That means they've got lots of access over the general population. And there are places that are much lighter where there is not very much. And if you picture a 60% state, like most of the Southeast here, it means that the schools involved, the people trying to get their homework done, the people trying to start in the workforce, people trying to develop their resumes, and any number of things, don't have access to the tools that enable them to make their best foot forward in the context. This doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means it's significantly more difficult. And when the public libraries don't have access to the internet, that 10 years ago, that was actually good enough, right? Most people who didn't have home access, broadband in their house, could go to a library and access most of the technology. But between licensing of the capability and accounts and how you control them now, if you're not in, you're really not in. So what needs to be done? There's a number of various aspects to this problem. Okay. Interesting.
It's good. Great. Great. That's great.
I think the chart may have been left off. Go one more and see if it's there. Okay, yeah, here we go. There are several ways to frame the problem because it has in some cases, as that last chart showed, to do with geography. Areas of the country that have access to the fiber, have access to satellite coverage, have access to the economic reach. All these things provide some element of movement. You heard right before lunch a conversation about ways to increase the reach of these things by playing in the intermediate altitudes between satellites and the ground. Great, that will help the problem also, but only for those who have economic wherewithal to engage in one way or another and the access to the device. In the main technology world, we were just having a conversation right before we started up here about new data centers going up for the purposes of AI. Buildings the size of towns that take billions of dollars to run and operate. That are they becoming the pieces of the enabling technology elements of these things going forward? While the main infrastructure for code and things in the technology world is decaying in the same way our bridges are. This is, infrastructure investment is never popular. It's important, but it's not sexy. And so it's usually the last thing that gets taken care of in any given situation. So while our broadband infrastructure has a significant amount of cable and fiber to it, those things are less maintained in areas where the challenge is strongest. So you'll get new fiber in New York City, in Jackson, Mississippi, you may or may not. And that's an ongoing problem in the structure. Politically, besides the things I was talking about, and that's as much as I'll say about that political environment, but job onshoring, competitive gaps that are created from that. The fact that a lot of the tools are walled gardens. A few years ago, there was a belief that things like AOL, which was a walled garden environment for the internet, were going to go away altogether. And everybody would be in the space that folks who use Google, Gmail are, where everybody's just reaching out in the web browsers. But think about it. Everybody has a device in here. I assume we're not on that side of the divide right now, but how many of your things are active? How many things do you go into as a specified control that sort of thing? For which there's a subscription fee. In the entertainment world, you pay for your TV, you pay for your capability there, you pay for your radio, you pay for your access to your bank accounts, you pay for, and it's all there. There's applications, and they're all have to be maintaining controls, and there's money involved in all that. And then in the digital areas where there is less of a population, a teaching population, where they're lacking teachers, kids are not being educated in how these things even work. And you think about it, probably I would guess, how many people in here at some point in their life did coding? Good half, okay. How many people are facile with Python now, amongst those people who said the original question? Okay, you see the difference? Python is a near next generation, it's in the cradle right now. But as you move into AI informed versions of those things, even those understandings are going to be adjusted and outlaid. And so the technology is moving so fast that even people who were technologically literate in some of these things 10 years ago are falling out of literacy. I'm there myself. I spent a lot of time when I actually am old enough now that I did my original programming on punch cards in a class, but I've actually got up at that deck and I've dropped one, so I know what that's like. That's a very small number of people in this room who've ever had that experience anymore. And pretty soon, people won't remember, I see another one, Netscape anymore. Netscape was the browser that broke the wall open to get these things going in the first place. It's not a major player anymore, but it was the source of a lot of the data. Now you've got competitive things in that area. So I sound like I'm going off track, but I'm really not. This characteristic of the technology evolving this fast, combined with economic and geographical limitations on most people, mean where you are literate, your area is getting more literate, and you are losing ground at exponential speed. So can policy help with it? Maybe. The first step that needs to be taken on is recognizing that the divide is not caused by race, it's not caused by what's in your actual checkbook, and none of those things are really the driver. It's the fact that where you live and what you know and what you're taught have to correspond with one another. The education process needs to begin with, grassroots school level things in the elementary schools. A lot of schools these days teach on tablets in the economically well off. Whereas books are becoming hard to find because how many people in here have kids who don't actually have textbooks for their classes? They're all online. More and more common. I guarantee you if we were in Mississippi, that would be a different number because they simply don't exist. At the same time, the book publishers are going out of business because there isn't enough wherewithal and capital to keep them going. The people who could afford to buy the books don't need to, and the rest of the people don't want to. So we're becoming less functionally educated at the base level. So that's the first policy initiative that needs to take place. We need to put a major emphasis on technology education and not the scary kind. If you remember when we were kids, I guarantee whatever age group you're in, this is still true. When we were kids, math was painted as a hard subject to learn. It's like, oh, I have to go to math now. People liked it, everybody else didn't. Technology is the same thing. It's like the tech stuff. If you're not playing games, if you're not swiping right or swiping left, it's considered hard, difficult. And so changing that perception can be done with policy and education. Teaching folks the very basic level of things at the very basic part of their educational career. The next step is to invest heavily in redoing the infrastructure. Infrastructure bills for technology migration should be as strong as infrastructure bills for fixing bridges. I mean, it's more obvious when you run over a bridge that happened not that far from here, not that long ago, what happens to society as a result. But if that bridge gap between you and the internet goes away, it's far more immediately encompassing what happens. A few years back, when pagers were still an important technology, the pager constellations went out for a few days. The medical society was in arrears because doctors weren't getting their pagers to go to the hospital. For about 6-7 days, they ended up actually going to the hospital and sitting there because they had no choice because there was no way to communicate. So they were sitting by their house phones or sitting in the hospitals for no other reason than the communications network was down. Picture what happens if GPS goes offline. Now, if you don't know, GPS is the navigation satellite that allows you to take your phone and walk from here to there without getting lost because it tells you exactly where you are all the time. But it's based upon a timing system that works at the sub-nanosecond level. The way GPS works, it's off topic, but it's kind of interesting. 4 satellites up there are sending something back from from 11,000, 12,000 miles away. And the 4 satellites are all pinging you with the same clock time. But light moves this far in a nanosecond. So in a billionth of a second, light goes exactly that far, which means that just took 3 nanoseconds. So the constellation, 11,000 miles up, it triangulates those positions. That's fun, but the important thing is the banks also do their clock calculations based on that. At the nanosecond level, all bank trading is done using GPS clocks. So if the system goes down, not only does it go away, but everyone doesn't understand why. And the technologically illiterate simply see their bank accounts close and stopping working. And picture the kind of fun panic that happens. We haven't had run to the banks in a long time, but if people are technologically illiterate, don't understand what's happening, panic is the natural response. So even if you have the devices, if you don't know how to work, you run into a problem. So everybody needs to be on the same educational playing field. The infrastructure needs to be caught up. And then finally, we need to advocate for the people to have this kind of access. So the policymakers need to be advertising through all domains. Get yourself a basic education in technology, and that needs to be made basically available. So along with learning math and reading and history, any sort of subject, you should be learning a little bit about technology play. I mean, when you have the devices, know what to do. Anybody who does code, they're fine doing it for the most part. It's like it's a challenge to solve problems. That kind of mystique needs to be put into the technology problem if you're going to solve it. If we can realign the policy aims of the governments on this planet, all right, all of them, then you will start to see an improvement in communications. And innately with that comes a better understanding of each other. The places where there is communication in the world, a lot of that, I know you're saying stuff, it doesn't happen. Now, interesting, in our country, we've got a very weird split going on where people are creating their own echo chambers with it. You also have to be aware of that. The other thing that needs to happen is people need to understand that data isn't necessarily information. Data that has been verified to be true is, but right now, the voices that you hear are the voices speaking loudest, not the ones that actually have accurate information. So things like fact checking, which are being slowly weeded out of the process in the technology world, need to be put back in. Now that's all over the map, but my answer to the original question is, if you can make progress on even a couple of these directions, then you will see the digital gap begin to decay. Let's think about it. If everybody had a basic technological literacy, no matter what they were doing, then they would be able to encourage their kids to get more education and more training and be able to end up with better salaries and better jobs. And it's a natural growth spiral. It's one that can be taken care of, but it needs to be taken care of at that lowest level, encouraging those who are starting out to become aware of what it is that is possible in this realm. And with that, I'll stop and answer questions if there are any. Or if you could.
Any questions, folks?
I'll ask the question first. So, yeah.
Yeah, I use the mic. Can you speak? I think, give me another one.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Some of them I probably don't have.
Hello, can you hear me?
Not right, yeah, right. This one.
Yeah, so my question is that you have outlined number of sort of policy dilemmas that society faces. And the question I have is, do you have any idea on how to address them?
In some cases, yes. Again, to avoid becoming too political in the conversation, I'm going to choose my words very carefully. Irrespective of how you believe this country is doing, irrespective of how you believe European cooperation is working, how you believe relations between India and China are working, and giving them in one case. The technological leveling has to happen with encouragement across the boundaries. That say the pipeline, the infrastructure for the data needs to flow freely between countries that have solid borders in order to allow information to get to those areas that are most threatened. That's a big. Another one is tech investment. Right now, more and more of the tech investment that is being done on the public level, out of the public sphere, is being done to shore up that, not the infrastructure I was talking about, but shore up the ability to move into AI data centers and things like that. Yeah. And an equal amount of that resource and arguments to go with it needs to be put into the trunk level communications capabilities that make things like the internet possible. And adding into other technologies like the stratospheric operations, but enabling the resources to be available to touch that system is critical. I think is the most critical thing we do.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we should, I think let's thank